Sup everybody, this is Karak with ACG, the Bearded Shaman of Gaming, and today I'm going to bring you a preview and not a review, so remember there will be no score at the end of this. Today we're going to take a look at Sundered. Now this is by the developers that brought us Jotun. Sundered is an action horror platformer, and they say that they're aiming for something like a Metroidvania style title, which is sort of like saying that you want cheese or jumpers jumping, but whatever, we'll discuss that in a moment. It's also a roguelike, which basically means Bill Murray in fantasy form running around dying, continually learning new skills to go back out into the world. The developer also launched their Kickstarter today, which I'm going to go ahead and link in the description as well. As always, if you like the video, maybe subscribe. So here's my preview for Sundered, and of course, graphics are up first. You know, Henry Ward Beecher once said every artist dips his brush in his soul and paints his own nature into his pictures. Ladies and gentlemen, I would never want to randomly run into these guys in a dark alley. Well, really, a lot of people will compare it to H.P. Lovecraft. There is a majestic menace here and an almost punishing subterranean art aesthetic that seems to be the order of the day, and it really does lodge at home. Enemy design is just seriously out there. I mean, the first enemy you face is basically a hopped-up speed slug with a giant mouth. You could sort of think that racing slug from the Never-Ending Story without the rockets, tore its own shell off, and just basically went homicidal. And while there are not a huge number of enemies so far in the preview, the next ones are flying, shambling things that are so reminiscent of an H.P. Lovecraft horrible world denizen that it's really impossible to miss. Or the later enemies that wear huge robes and the only thing you see is tentacles coming from their head areas, like the game designer said, you know what? No human can see this. Let's put some pants on this bad guy. Now, while there isn't much here, the overall feeling of an organic evil chemistry that's going on in this world out there, this dangerous place, absolutely is nailed by the enemies. And when it comes to levels in their design, of which this is a preview, so there's not many, are actually done really well. Now, to be up to the review code to really lock in if the procedurally generated levels are going to work, especially for repeated playthroughs. There's this strange otherworldly feeling in almost everything, from the main character's swirling attack to enemies as they pause and gather themselves before pouncing on you like a demonic Shaggy and a Scooby snack. Really, really cool. Now, while it ran fairly well at 1440p, it did have some stuttering moving right and left, but this is also an alpha, so I'm pretty much surprised the damn thing never crashed. Overall, as a package, I'd say the game absolutely delivers so far, and on an alpha, it is certainly farther along than I expected graphically. Sound, music, and voice. And of course, we're going to look at sound up first, and they nailed it. Echo, reverb, big airy spaces. They all feel perfectly aligned with your actions, and the oddly weird musical thrum of your shield when it gets hit works really, really well. If there's any issue that I personally have, it's that footsteps are highly muted, and setting different settings, I really couldn't get it dialed in perfectly, and no matter what, especially when the going gets tough and the tough get dying, it's actually important to be able to hear those. So I hope I'll be able to figure that out later on. Might just be the location itself too, because we've seen a ton of subterranean locations. We don't really know what these guys are offering later on. Overall though, I'd say for sound, a really good start. Music. Now this was actually a surprise, though there isn't a lot. One of the things I did love is that while it's hidden in the background, floating around and just reminding you it's playing, the times that the soundtrack comes forward with growly, gnarly musical prompts instantly makes you think one of two things. One, I'm being digested in some massive fantastical beast, or two, something wicked this way comes. It is a very heady and thick vibration heavy soundtrack, and it really hits more on the undercurrent of, say, discordant horror movie soundtracks that make you feel vaguely unsettled for a reason, really than something more game-like. Now that doesn't mean that occasionally flitting in and out are some violins that at first seem completely confused as to where they are. I liked that. It just has a very different, more experimental feeling to the overall soundtrack. I'm not sure what else is going to be here, but this level at least set the thematic tone very well. Voice. Barely any, so mostly just sounds from your character. Moving on. Gameplay. Now, remembering this is an alpha, there isn't really a starting. You're basically just boom and loaded into the level. You start at some mammoth structure where you buy skills for your character. Now, so far they're bog standard, live longer, die less, hit harder kinds. Then you sort of exit stage left and go into this procedurally generated world. Now, the main character can attack with his sword in 4 primary directions. And trust me, learning to attack up and down while on a precipice with a bunch of creatures questionably attracted to you is a vital skill to pick up as quick as possible. You also have a massive gun. Actually, it's more of basically a shoulder cannon, and when you fire it, you go one way, the projectile goes the other, sending you rolling backwards. Now, this is an odd mechanic, but it's an additional danger trait that makes its use the purview, I think, of experts versus someone just spamming low ammo-filled triggers. I like that. You can also roll, which can be added to the end of a jump right at a cliff to give you some serious extra speed and loft sometimes. It just works. Now, I was a bit surprised to find that the mouse and keyboard was finicky, and I do have some nicer keyboards with mechanical switches, and even they just didn't really feel on. You will notice that the devs suggest a controller, and I have to say, I think that nails it perfectly. Where Rise and Shine, which I recently reviewed, felt like you had to use the mouse and keyboard, Sundered really feels almost exactly the opposite. Now, while traversing, your job is to basically get to specific areas and open or unlock doors, understanding that sometimes the way to a location might be absolutely mind-bogglingly excessive, depending on your own level and procedurally created monstrosity. You have to unlock a couple doors, then face off against a boss creature. Now, while playing, I did notice a couple things that I'm going to keep an eye out for, of course, understanding this is an alpha. There were some odd difficulty spikes. Actually, I wouldn't even call them spikes as much as pure death rooms, where even my fully upgraded character died simply because getting hit actually pushes you around, and so many enemies end up flooding some of these locations. You actually can't see your character. Now, also on the Kickstarter, they mentioned dynamic enemy spawns, which, as I discussed earlier with the kill rooms, I did not actually notice. There were a couple places where it certainly didn't feel like it was dynamic. It felt like a particular room was just incredibly, insanely dangerous, no matter what happened, and no matter what my health or levels were like. But you know what? That's an alpha. So let's discuss fun factor for a second. You know, the plain and simple truth is I'd rather play what I have with Sundered here than many of the games I reviewed in 2016. You guys know some of the titles I'm talking about. It's eminently playable right now. It's something that I would actually enjoy and will actually continue to enjoy as it comes to bear fruit. You know, it's funny to me. It's not that the Kickstarter is new. It's not that even this gameplay style is exactly new. What is new to me is the fact that something that just went out on Kickstarter looks eminently, absolutely playable even right now, and looks farther along than, as I said, some sadly finished games already. So that's it for me. I hope you guys like the preview. I don't get to do as many of these as I would want to, and I'm slowly starting to get more of these. I'm really happy to show you guys this title. So as always, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Maybe check out Twitter, Patreon, or the Amazon affiliates. I cannot stress enough how Patreon and the Amazon affiliates actually help the channel. If you dislike the video, give it a thumbs down. Peace out, and enjoy the rest of your week.